G'day everybody, this is Rogue One. I'm going to go through today some ASKA tips and tricks for early to mid game. These will help you in the long term and help you get to end game, help you also have a head start on the end game sort of resources, and making sure that you have an abundance of resources to allow you to actually survive the winter, keep all your villagers fed, clothed, and all of that stuff. Alright, so we're going to go through a list of buildings first. So we're going to go through the gatherer's hut, also going to touch on the lumber, stone, the farms, and also the crafting shelters, the cooking station, the hunting cabin, the archery range, the combat range, and the warehouse, and touch on any other little things that I can think of as we go. So first of all, one of the most important buildings is actually the gatherer's hut. So what the gathering hut is going to do is allows you to assign a worker or two or three, depending on what level you're at, to go out and constantly just gather resources and materials for you. This is really important early game, as they will go out and gather berries and vegetables and stuff to keep your villagers fed. Although not well fed, it will just keep them fed until you can get a better food source. So as well as this cabin, every other cabin in the game or every other workstation has the ability for you to open up the menu and choose the tasks that you want them to perform, and you can change their levels from low to high depending on what you're chasing that season, or what exactly that you need for your current needs, I guess. So you can go through and you can make them gather seeds, or you can make them gather vegetables themselves. If you've got too many feathers, you can get them to stop looking for feathers. But basically, you can go through here and just set all of the vegetables to medium or high, and everything else to low, depending on what you need. This is really important early game. It's obviously one of the first buildings you have to build, and getting this to the hut as soon as possible is really important. This has helped me end game as well, like getting the gatherers to go out and gather vegetables for the cooking station, which we'll touch on later. It's just a constant source of food all year round, including winter. So during winter, they'll go out and also gather the yellow mushrooms, which are used to cook throughout winter. I've obviously used all of mine, but yeah, we'll get to the cooking station in a little bit. One of the important things that I didn't realize until pretty late into winter is that all of your tribesmen have proficiencies right here. So they've got stone harvesting, fishing. They all have their own individual ones, and it doesn't matter what their proficiency is or what they're good at. You can make them do whatever you want them to do. So you can take a random villager that's really good at fishing and make them a really good gatherer. You just have to put them into that job role for long enough for them to level up. The only thing that really comes into consideration is the perks. So obviously this person, you don't really want these ones. Early game, when picking villagers, try not to pick villagers that will eat more than normal, because early game to mid game, that is actually important, because they will eat too much food and they will leave you hungry for the winter, which obviously very bad. Obviously mid to late game, it doesn't really matter. You can get more food, you can get an abundance of food, but early game, try to avoid villagers that say that they eat more than usual. Drinking more than usual doesn't really matter, because you can just build more water wells or set up more water catchers, whatever you need. But yeah, so that's villagers and the gatherer's hut. We're going to now is the lumber and stonemason. So these two buildings, obviously you got to build them to progress further. So the woodcutter's house, same as the gatherer's hut, you can go through and set tasks of what you want. More importantly, when you get to hardwood, you can also get them to gather hardwood. You just need to set a gathering marker, so the wood harvester marker. You've obviously got to set that near hardwood, and you've got to give them the tools to be able to chop down that wood. Otherwise, you just need to keep crafting them tools. They'll come and approach you and tell you when their tools break, so you've got to keep them upped on tools to make sure that they can actually do their job. And we'll get into the building station later, which you can set to auto craft you tools while you're out and about doing things. But back to the gatherer's hut as well, you need to have these food foraging markers set near early game. I would say set them near berries and where there's an abundance of vegetables like onion and cabbages and beetroot and things like that, because when they reset the year later, they will be able to go and gather them again. And as you find more places around the world, you can obviously set more markers. So as I've been exploring, I've sort of set markers when I find an abundance of food in a single area. Same with lumberyard. Like these are down near thatch because thatch is a late game thing, and it's kind of important to have an abundance of that as well. So you want to have, whenever you find a large group of deer, you want to place a hunting marker. When you find a large placement of berries and vegetables, you want to place a food foraging marker. So what they'll do is they'll travel between all of these and exhaust them dry, and then they'll go to the next one. So you want to constantly just be expanding where you put your foraging markers. So that goes with wood and stone as well. Wood not so important because it's very, very abundant early. When you get later on and you've sort of cleared around your entire base like this, that's when you sort of got to start moving them and sort of reaching out a little bit further to try and expand where they can actually go and gather resources. So the same as the woodcutter's hut, the stonemason is very, very similar. The markers for them is not so important because you don't need so much stone early game. Small stones, yes, so you can go in here and set their task to gather small stones, more importantly over large stones. And what they'll do is they go chop up and they will also break up the large stones to get you smaller stones, so you'll have an abundance of small stones early game, which is important. What we're going to touch on next is the farm. So the farm is another really, really important thing. All year round you can have crops being grown. Very, very similar. So you can only build 3 crop plots per farm, and you can assign up to 3 people here once you've got enough farm for them to actually farm. So in tasks here you can set what crop is grown on each plot. So it'll obviously tell you if that item is available for the season. Early game, I would suggest setting majority to fiber, because fiber is obviously very important for rope, and you're going to need so much of it early game that it is ridiculous. You'll always have not enough rope early game until you can actually have an abundance of fiber. So for this one, I have garlic being made. Garlic is just a good vegetable to have for cooking. But apart from that, I really just have fiber set most of the year round. This season I have too much fiber, so I've now changed to vegetables. But usually I would say just have 2 to 3 fiber farms going constantly. And then you can, at the end of each harvest, you'll have an entire thing of fiber in here and you won't know what to do with it. And that leads me into the next one. So over here at the workshops, so this is a setup that I'd say early game is more important. So for a workshop, you want to have the leather worker on the left side and the loom on the right side. This just allows you to use some of that extra fiber. You can start making armor. Armor is obviously going to be very, very good for winter because it gives you a lot of stat bonuses. Like as you can see, rain protection, the helmet. This one's more for armor over anything else. But when you look at these ones here, the cold resistance, rain protection, cold resistance, that's more important than anything else really, I would say, is cold resistance. Obviously, you can just wear flimsy for the first year, and then you can upgrade to leather, and then you can upgrade to thick linen, and you can then go to rough iron. But rough iron is more armor over protection. But at the same time, it's just very, very good to have. So once you've set up this, you can also come in here. This one we built second because clothing wasn't as important to us because we just crafted it ourselves. But for this one here, as you can see, I've got all these tasks going. And these are all very important. You need the wooden rake to allow the farmers to work. I've set it to 1 for all of these. So what Sif will do is, as one of these is taken off the tool rack inside by one of the tribesmen, they will then create a new one to be put onto here. So what you want to do is you want to have rakes, large stone axes, large stone pickaxes, bows, arrows, stone knives, torches, and a fishing rod if you have a fisherman. The torches are only important for if you have a mine. So once you've finally found a mine like this, you need the torches to allow your tribesmen to actually go down into there and to safely mine in there. Okay, this was unavoidable. Alright, this unintentionally led to another thing. These guard towers or watchtowers are much better than hedge walls, as they give your hunters or your bowmen a much larger range when protecting your base. And you want to have those peppered around the outskirts of your base. Eventually, it is an early game thing. It's more of a mid to late game thing. But yeah, so that pretty much touches on the warehouse. You just want to have them making tools for whatever tasks are required. So wooden rakes for farming, axes for lumber, pickaxes for stone masonry, bows for hunters and archers. Stone knife is also for the hunters to bring back meat. Simple torch for miners that are going into the mine. Alright, what we'll move on to next is the okay, so the next thing was this anyway. I don't really have a worker here anymore, but when you start getting an abundance of fiber, what you can do is just chuck it into the chest there, and then you go into here and go view tasks, and you want to assign them tasks. So you say two hoods, 2 shirts, 2 pants, 2 shoes, 2 gloves, and what they'll do is they'll outfit these racks here, and what will happen is your villagers or your tribesmen will just come and pick up armor as they need it. So what you can do is you don't have to actually go around and give every single one of your tribesmen armor. They will just come here and grab it as they need it, or if they want it. And they will prioritize flimsy over leather. So if you build them all flimsy armor and then you want to upgrade to leather, they will want to keep wearing the flimsy. So the hunter's hut. Alright, so this is actually a 2-parter. So the hunter's hut actually goes hand in hand with the archery range. So what you want to do is, if you want someone to be a hunter, put them into the archery range, go view tasks, and set the patrol point to the archery range, and you want to go train at this building, and then select the wait time for the amount of hours they work in the day. So they're just constantly here training their archery level, which will help them hunt better, obviously. It'll also help them be better guards. They'll do more damage from up there in the tower. As you can see, my guy is just currently up there shooting. But you do have to still put up with this if you don't have enough archery towers to take them out earlier. So I've actually unintentionally been shown another thing that I can point out. So with the fighting, when you get to iron, so wait for all these sounds to stop. So when you get to iron, what you want to do is you just want to have this large iron axe, or this large crude iron axe. It actually does the same amount of damage as a 2-handed claymore, and the durability is about the same. This actually has a little bit more durability than the sword, but this does equal, if not better, damage than the sword does for killing enemies. So it's not as important to build a sword. The only reason that I crafted a sword was to give to my combat people, so they had something that they can train with, because they can't actually train with the axe. You'll have to fact check that. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, so the archery range, you want to put someone there that you want to be a hunter, and then that goes hand in hand with this hunting cabin or hunter's hut. So what the hunter's hut is, it basically works the same as everything else. You go out and you set a marker where you find deer, or you can even set it near wolf dens, but there's the potential of them getting injured. So every time you find a bunch of deer, set down a hunter's marker, and they will just travel between there all year round and hunt you deer, bring you back meat, and they'll bring back these big hunks of meat here. And obviously you can see both of mine are filled, so my village isn't running short on food at all. But yeah, same thing as the stonemason and every other building. You can set the tasks or the priorities here. So for me, I don't really want bone fragments, so I can put that down to low, but it'll allow us to get meat hunks for raw meat, leather, and you can obviously use all of those things. So yeah, that works for the archery range and the hunter's cabin. But basically what I've done is I've set, if I go to my hunters, so if you look at their range combat, I've set them there so their range combat could go up. So I got it to 22 or 23, or it ranges between what I got them at. And that just means they do more damage when they're out hunting, means they can gather food more effectively. And this is why you need to give them the knife, so they can start skinning as well. So the next thing to touch on is the warehouse. So the warehouse is, for me, I didn't really know anything about it or think anything of it. I just built it and left it, and nothing was being gathered, and I was a bit confused about that, so I looked it up. What you do is you go into the hunter's cabin and you go to storage, and you can build different food storages or item storages or anything like that that you think is important, and they will go and gather that once you've assigned a worker here. So if you look at my workers here, I've got one worker. I can set it to 2, but 1 is enough for one warehouse. And what I do is you go into tasks and you can set the priority for what you want more importantly, like every other sort of thing. The 2 that I would suggest are most important is probably this ore and bloom storage. So what will happen is when you get attacked, like I just did over there, I can go out and harvest them, and they might drop some scrap metal. And what you can do with the scrap metal is melt that down into iron or iron blooms, and then they will place it in here for you. So he will just constantly be running out gathering iron scraps whenever there are metal scraps around the base. And the other one is obviously meat. Meat is super important, especially in winter. You want to just have an abundance of that. You don't want to let it go rotting on these walls over here. I obviously need to build some more, so I'm probably going to build another warehouse and make that predominantly, meat and some other things as well. And that leads me into the next one, why you need so much meat. So meat, being one of the better food sources, allows you to use the cooking station more effectively. So what I've done here, if you go into tasks, I have them making 32 meat soups. One of them is a nighttime, like a night owl. The other one is a daytime worker. So whenever there is empty soups on this rack, they will be in here making soup. And then again, goes back to the gatherer's hut. The gatherer's hut is constantly grabbing vegetables and other raw food items, bringing them here, and then they go and harvest the meat and make the soups. And the soups being one of the better food options in the game, this is definitely important for mid to late game. So what will happen is this guy will come and make soups all day, because he's set to 32, but there's only a space for 15. So as soon as 15 have been made, he'll make another 15, and then obviously keep doing that all day, all night. And then what they'll do is they'll go gather it, and they'll place it here for your villagers to come and eat straight from here. Obviously you can see my hunger is a little bit past halfway, so if I eat one of those soups, that one was not a good one. So if you do leave them too long, they lose their effectiveness, but it gives you water, it gives you food. It's really, really good. You want to have them constantly making it. I would suggest having a nighttime worker and a day worker. Again, the perks are the only time that's important. You can set them to work whatever schedule you want. so that when your villagers wake up in the morning, there's food ready, and when they're about to go to bed at night, there's also food ready. So there'll constantly be food, always being made. Yeah, you just want to make sure your gatherer's hut is set up right. You've got plenty of people going out and gathering items for you, as well as your farm making more vegetable items as well. So they will even use blueberries and other things like that, but again, it's more important just to have them than it is to what they are. And then over here, the two meals that I would say are probably the best meals. So obviously meat soup being the best for hunger, as it does pretty much half a hunger meter, as well as the garlic soup. So the garlic soup is another super important one for winter. So what it will do is it will give them a warm boost, as well as cure any sicknesses that they might have, like sore throats, colds, etc. As long as you have the materials, you can set this to be constantly running. You can, you can unlock new meals, but the important two are probably the meat soup and garlic soup. I wouldn't recommend doing the berry compote or the berry jam early game, as it uses way too many blueberries, in my opinion. But again, that's my opinion, not to be taken for law. But yeah, there's some of the basic buildings that you will probably run into. They're really important. Definitely early game, try and get them in that order. The hunter's hut, it doesn't matter where you build that, so you can build it in your village like I have. I've got 4 of them, so I've constantly got 8 hunters going out at all times. It doesn't matter where you build those, as long as you set markers where there's enemies or deer or wolves or whatever you're chasing at the time. Yeah, the only reason I'd say set them near wolves is if you have your hunters with high archery, just so they can kill them a bit faster, so they're not taking too much damage. But yeah, so that's most of the basic buildings that are important. Obviously, the barracks is also pretty much in line with the archery range. To keep your defense bar down, you want to set more and more patrol routes, and you don't want them to follow them in a line. You want them sort of to follow them sporadically. So I have one set at each gate. So I have one person doing a border walk constantly, and I have another person that runs between different houses and different buildings, just very, very random, sort of just so that his line crosses a bunch of different places. So there's constantly warriors walking around your village. While we're here, we might as well touch on housing. So once you've gotten past the little shit shack, I'd call it, the shelter, this one, it breaks too quick. It's kind of useless. It only houses one person. So you can, as soon as you are able to get rid of those, I would suggest getting a cottage or 10. And what you can do inside a cottage is you can actually go inside and craft more beds. So you can have 3 comfortably living in each house. Once you go to 4, you start taking away from their comfort, and their happiness meter will start going down. And for this as well, when it comes to filtering, I'd say put happiness as the filter. You want to see who's unhappy instead of having to search for them. But for the most part, most of my villages are all at 100 or 99 based on a lot of different things, including the defenses, their comfort rating, how many decorations around, and things like that. So yeah, cottages are really, really important. They switch your shelters from 1 potential new tribesman to 3. So yeah, much, much better. Takes a little bit longer to build, obviously, but very important. I would suggest holding off on getting a dog if you are planning on getting one. Definitely wait before you start getting dogs, because they eat a ridiculous amount of meat, and early game, that meat takes away from your tribesmen, and you will likely start to starve like I did. I tried to raise 2 wolves at once and ended up using up all my food, and my villagers started paying the price for that. Next building, healing hut. As long as you have a shaman set here, this is important, but if you don't want to have a shaman set there, just don't bother. So basically what you do is you lay down when your health is low, and the shaman will come and heal you. I have mine set to nighttime because I usually take damage at night, and I'd rather them be available when I need healing, not all day. Like during the day, you don't really take much damage unless you're going out hunting or fighting. So having them as nighttime allows them to heal you at night, and they're always available for you. That's pretty much it for the basics. Most of my buildings here are upgraded, so obviously that's the only reason that there's so much stuff going on right now. All of these buildings have been upgraded to the houses. I did build one of these longhouses to test them, and they are actually kind of useless. They're about as big as a cottage, but yeah, you can only really house an extra person before you have to build another one, which also takes hardwood, logs, planks, and a bunch of really expensive late game materials that you don't really want to do. I would suggest only building a longhouse if you're planning on living in it yourself, or if you just like the way that they look. Like, yes, they might have some higher HP, but they're also kind of useless as a tribe's living area. Alright, so yeah, now my storage space is full. That's where you sort of need to start building more meat storage and things like that. As you defeat bosses, you'll get runes, which allow you to make different rune stones, and they each give you different stats. You'll have to look those up because I can't memorize those ones. But yeah, that's basically it. When you get to late game, you need to focus on the bloomery and the coal maker, but at the moment they're not overly important. Early game, I would suggest pretty much looking at everything that I've said, making your own assumptions, doing things your own way. Obviously play how you want to play, but that is probably the order that I would build things if I did this again. There was some struggle street and some punishment by the gods, but here we are. We've survived, we've thrived. Now we've got too much food, and everyone is pretty happy. Now is sort of my time to start building up my tribe and setting more people to defenses, and building some more storage areas, and the plan to extend the entire base down that way a couple 100 meters, so it's going to actually be a massive base when it is done. Oh yeah, that reminds me, roads, super important. So when you're running on a road, as you can see there next to the little strength marker above my health, I'm actually getting a speed boost and stamina reduction by running on a road. So your villagers will also follow roads over like any other path. So as you'll see, they'll stick to the roads. They'll constantly just keep running on the roads. They use less stamina, so they're faster. And you can set this pathing however you want. I've gone for more of a decorative approach to it. But when it comes to like housing and stuff, the houses lead straight back to the main road, and they lead to every single workstation. So the tribe will take the shortest possible route to get to anywhere in the village, which is obviously good. It kind of does affect your warriors, as they will follow roads to get to markers, which means that they won't protect the base as helpful, I guess. So what you can do as well is build a road around the entire boundary of your base and just set them to go to the markers, and they will run a circle around your base. But that's basically it for the basics. If anyone wants a video on a specific building or me to touch on anything, I can give a better tutorial. But that is basically my very poorly thrown together tutorial on the basic buildings. Yeah, any questions, leave them in the comments. Any issues with what I said, also leave it in the comments. If you have found a better way to do things, please tell me, and I will take that on board and try and use that information for myself and for others. But yeah, I hope that helped you guys, and yeah, enjoy.